All right. Hello, colleagues who have joined us recently, and thank you all who have been staying with us from the previous talks. It's Quality Engineering Community Day 2023 that is conducted by the Global Testing and Pro Quality communities. We are happy to see you all with us. And our next speakers are Maksim Karnitski and Yury Zhylko with the topic Data-Driven Decision-Making in Testing. Our speakers will share with you how to set up a data-driven decision-making process of release readiness to production at a scale of 400 people, how to set up annual quality goals, and how to pursue achievement of those goals. What to do if there are no quality metrics on the project and the stakeholders, the client, does not see the value of having them. And what are the main challenges and lessons learned out of quality transformation at such a scale? Before we start, a little bit of organization. This session will be recorded and the recording will be available a week after the session. Please leave your questions in the agenda page in Q&A section and the speakers will answer them. So let me present our speakers. We have Yury Zhylko with 13 years experience in quality engineering, worked all the way from manual test engineer to a quality engineering manager. Now his main focus is on managing testing teams, implementing and driving quality initiatives at a large scale and complex projects. And we have Maksim Karnitski, 10 years experience in quality engineering, was playing the roles of manual test engineer, mixed tester, lead, team lead, and test manager. Now focuses mainly on test automation excellence, in parallel driving quality engineering improvements on a project. So Yury, Max, are you ready? Let's go.
Sure.
Let's go.
Yeah, we can start. All right, so first about the context. First, I will give some context about the project, what state we had when we started introducing release readiness and annual project goals. That state was about 4 years ago, and result we have right now. Then Yury will share how it was with release readiness introduction and adoption, iterations we had, issues, and how we solved them. Next, I will present what we had with annual goals project, and finally, as a summary, what we learned. Main points that we would like to highlight and that can be used if you would like to apply something similar on your project. So this is a summary. All right, let's go. So project context. Let's start with project highlights, which will help to understand what context we had at that moment. We started introducing our changes when project was in the following state, so high-level numbers. 5 years running project at that time. So currently it's about 10 plus years, so it's still ongoing, it's long-running project. That time it was 40 plus Scrum teams. Some was working on the same scope, some on different. Most of them had cross dependencies. Project with more than 2 million lines of code. And as a product, it served, still serving more than 2 million users within more than 5,000 companies with unique configurations and working in different domains and operating on 3 continents, North America, Europe, and Australia. A little more details about project. Project team, engineers, managers were located in US, Belarus, and India. We were following 2-week sprints with major releases every 2 months and with hotfixes delivered every week. Major releases assume deployment of single package to 6 production environments plus some amounts of auto test, just to give you context of our scale. So it was about 35,000 of API auto tests, 1,000 of UI auto test, plus about 60,000 manual test cases, which is a huge amount in test management system. But on average, we were running about 7,000 of them each release. As for product, a little more details. It's workforce domain. It's about human resources, time management, and payroll system. And it's web application with mobile version on iOS and Android. And in addition, there were specific hardware which the app integrated with. So it's additional models that we should consider. All right, this is the context. Let's see the issues that we had. First of all, quick growth. We were fast growing. Project started with 5 engineers and grown to more than 200 in 5 years. There was a period we grown 3 times in 2 years. So as a result, more functionality were implemented, more customers were coming, and more unique configurations they had. And production environment scaled to serve more clients, so we got more production servers. And the result of this growth made communication and dependencies across teams complicated. And unfortunately, existing practices were not applicable for new scale. Issues that we noticed and bothered us, we fixed on the fly without any investigation, on a hurry, so just to fix them. And we started missing single product criteria. So it was interpreted differently by teams, especially new one. Together with that, in terms of quality, there were no clear understanding of release readiness. Teams said they're ready or not for the release based on their own criteria, and key people made decision to release new product version or not based on feelings, based on experience, knowledge about product, and team's verbal status. At that time, we did not have process effectiveness evaluation because it worked in our organization. You see everything, but not in use scale. And common process blurred during growth. And as I mentioned before, issues we fixed on the fly without focus on critical parts of the process, and especially in terms of common process on organization level. And while trying to fix it, we were switching between different directions to reorganize the project. People were pulling to different approaches, and that led to wasting time and effort on not relevant improvements. And what was negatively affected? Right, it was about quality of the product, so it was going down. And how did we understand it? It was about complaints from customers and support, and overall number of bugs growing in Jira. And right, if you think if it's more on the feeling than based on data. So this is why we introduced data-driven decision approach on different aspects of our product and project. So let's go next. Here, with some solutions that we applied, we would like to share this experience. And next slide is for Yury. So Yury will share release readiness process, introducing and adoption that we did. Yury?
Yeah, thank you, Maksim. Considering all the issues mentioned by Maksim, it became obvious that the existing processes need to be transformed, reworked, and adjusted to accommodate the new scale. The processes were not standardized across all teams and were not capable of scaling effectively. However, the most critical problems was the lack of common quality and delivery metrics. So, decision to release a new version of the product was made based on subjective feelings. This approach caused a decrease in the overall quality of the application. We recognize the urgent need to make release readiness decision based on metrics rather than subjective feelings, and we accepted the challenge to implement this initiative. So, on the next slide, Maksim, please. What we need to do in order to introduce a release readiness process? Yeah, it's obvious that first of all, we need to introduce metrics. Further, we need to describe them and share it with all stakeholders, and also provide the rules of this game. Next step, we need to introduce a tool for metrics tracking for all teams. We need to ask teams regularly review metrics and does some regular activities based on metrics. And the success should happen. Yeah. But whether it worked in our case? No. But what was the reason? The main reason in our case was a huge scale of the project. So let me remind that in those period of time, we had 40 plus different Scrum teams. Also, different vendors were involved into the project besides EPAM. Each team has its own processes, priorities, vision on quality, etc. And typical approach doesn't work in such stuff. Jumping ahead, I'd like to say that we are succeed in the implementation of release readiness process, but it took more than 4 years to do so. And the success requires a huge amount of energy, enthusiasm, patience, and effort. Yes, it was a long journey, and today we are ready to share with you a short summary of it, including all actions, achievements and failures, lessons learned, and suggestions. So let's begin. I divided the whole evolutionary process into some logical stages, and the first stage I called elaboration. First of all, we identified objectives and expectations of stakeholders. These form the basis for defining a release readiness matrix. Also, we defined target for these metrics. So on this slide, you can see our metrics which were defined. On the right side of the slide, you can see delivery metrics, and the most important of them, that all enhancements have to be closed before code freeze. On the left part of the slide, you can see quality metrics. So we must have 0 priority bugs and regression bugs in the release build. Speaking about priorities, I'd like to say that we had 4 priorities on the project from P1 to P4. P1 was considered as blocker, P2 as critical. And all P1 bugs must be closed. Speaking about P2 and regression bugs, they also should be closed, but some exceptions are possible. But these exceptions should be approved by leadership. So now we had a defined list of metrics. The next step, we assessed the current status of the project based on these metrics. And frankly speaking, we were a bit shocked by numbers. Judge for yourself. We had about 8% of not completed enhancements in the release. Also, we had about 150 not closed critical bugs in average in our release builds. Critical, I mean P1 and P2 bugs. Also, we had about 25 open regression bugs into release readiness, into release builds, and in overall, we have more than 3,000 open bugs in the product. That made a significant impact on customer experience. Moving further, we described the process in detail on the conference page. described all metrics, meanings, how they calculated, different rules, described the approach of using these metrics, described actions which should be done by teams, and so on and so forth. And also we identified the stakeholders that should be involved in this process. In addition to that, we created a Jira dashboard for tracking release readiness metrics. As a following step, all these details were shared with stakeholders. We handled their questions, adjusted the process based on their feedback. And after that, the new release readiness process were launched in parallel with the existing approach based on feelings. It was a pilot run of these two processes, old and new. And our idea was to compare the results of these approaches. And when the full cycle, release cycle was completed, we tried to evaluate the results. Did we have any positive changes or not? Results were not significant as we expected. Release readiness metrics were not achieved. Release readiness decision was made based on feelings as before. Also, there weren't any positive changes in the product quality. At the same time, we had some achievements. And the most valuable achievement was that we could prove that decisions based on feelings missed critical bugs. By using actual quality metrics, we were able to provide a clear picture of the product quality. Yes, the release readiness decision still was made based on feelings, but stakeholders were less confident in their decisions after seeing the objective data. Another significant achievement was that the leadership understood the scale of the problem, and all stakeholders were encouraged to contribute to quality improvements. And this was a first small win for us. However, we also faced numerous challenges during the process implementation, and the most significant obstacle was teams' resistance to changes and lack of responsibility. Teams used to work according to their own established processes and don't want to change something. Furthermore, there were no any consequences for not meeting release readiness criteria. Releases still happens regardless of whether the metrics were achieved or not. Additionally, product owners were more focused on implementation new features than fixing existing bugs. Another problem that we faced that teams received process description and tools, but they didn't know how to achieve necessary goals and how to influence on them. So this brings us to the next stage of the story, which called coaching. We understood that the process is not straightforward. It requires some additional regular activity from teams. Decision should be made based on metrics on a regular basis. And we assumed that the reason of lack of teams' involvement in this process was that teams didn't figure out how to do so. And we need to educate them. We need to explain how to work with this process. Therefore, we introduced a release champion role. The idea was that this person should be responsible for navigating team through release readiness process, assist them, highlight gaps, and explain how to resolve them. By design, the role should be transferred to each new QA lead from release to release. And the goal of this transition or rotation was to share experience across all domain teams. And the second major improvement which was implemented, this is a release readiness status notification. We understood that dashboards was quite complex. Jira dashboards was quite complex, and it has more than 25 different gadgets, and it was hard to evaluate a current status from the first glance. Therefore, we implemented a release readiness status email. So, this is the example of such email. It was sent on daily basis to all stakeholders. it contained current status of metrics and trends for them. This email was sent by release champion, and it was created manually. Did all these improvements help us to achieve release readiness criteria? What do you think? Still no. And releases still happened regardless the metrics were not met. However, we have some positive trends in delivery and quality metrics. Let's observe them. Now we have around 4% of not closed enhancements targeted to release, but previously we had about 8%. We have around 30 priority bugs in the release build instead of 150. And also we have about, in average, 4 regression bugs in comparison with 25 earlier. These numbers still were not aligned with our expectations. But speaking about achievements, positive trends into delivery and quality metrics was one of the most significant ones. But in addition to that, we increased visibility for all stakeholders. They can see the current status in the daily email. They don't need to drill down to Jira dashboards. Teams also were involved into metrics review together with release champion. They were educated and understood how they need to do, what they need to do, and how to influence on the metrics. At the same time, we identified some new issues in the process. First of all, we identified gaps into release planning process. Planning was then done based on feelings. Enhancements were carried over to the next release. Post-code freeze commit were happened. Bug fix didn't include into plans for a release. The second problem is that the process didn't work without release champion assistance. Sometimes teams miss some important actions. And also, the last but not least, we still accept releases even if release readiness metrics were not achieved. There was no consequences if any teams fail release readiness metrics for their scopes. And these issues gave us some additional points for improvements. The next stage of the process evolution was dedicated to improvements in planning process. We shared our insights related to gaps into planning process with PMO organization on the client side. PMO organization started improvements for planning process across all teams. In parallel, we introduced PowerBI framework and developed some helpful dashboards. On the next slide, you can see some examples. First of all, a release readiness scorecard dashboard. This report collects historical data for team's velocity, calculates average velocity for a team, makes a forecast how many story points a team can complete in the release, compares this forecast with actual amount of story points targeted to the release. As a result, the report provides a conclusion. Can a team complete all planned work before code freeze or not? This report updates multiple times per day, and team can track the actual status and make decisions based on it. And this tool totally changed the approach of PA planning. It increased predictability. Teams can see risks related to delivery starting from the first days of the release development period and can mitigate any risks. But previously, all risks were identified in the last days before code freeze, and teams didn't have any chance to mitigate them. Also, there were introduced recommendations how many efforts teams should spend on enhancement and how for fixing bugs into the release. Speaking about the next important report, this release readiness status report. It was developed and it was replaced Jira dashboards. This report provides opportunity to track release readiness metrics and track progress for different testing activities like regression testing, performance testing, exploratory testing, and so on. And during those period of time, we still had release champion role. We had daily review meetings and all practices which were implemented previously. But even having all such tools and practices on board, we still didn't meet release readiness criteria. And the main reason was that teams couldn't able to close all P2 bugs before release date. So speaking about the status, finally, delivery metrics were achieved. Regarding P2 bugs, we still have from 10 to 25 open P2 bugs in the release build. This is because some new critical bugs were identified during regression testing before release, and sometimes teams were not enough time to resolve all of them. It's much better than 150 that we have in the beginning of the way, but still not zero. And also speaking about the regression bugs, we achieved this goal. As a result of this stage, we had some existing achievements, exciting achievements. So the PA planning process was significantly improved. It helped to increase predictability, avoid major changes of the application after code freeze. Also, the quality of the product was increased. And the last but not least, we introduced PowerBI framework, implemented some important reports which were used by the whole program. Also, we launched a Power BI training for the program and created a Power BI community. Despite all these major improvements, we have never met release readiness criteria. Releases still were launched despite the release readiness criteria were not met. And still the release champion involvement was needed because sometimes teams miss some important actions. And at those period of time, we realized that we have to revise expectations related to release readiness criteria, and we have to make some ground changes in the process. If we don't do that, we will never meet release readiness criteria. Therefore, the last stage of the story called transformation. First of all, finally, we convinced the customer to postpone release readiness to postpone releases if release readiness criteria are not met. It must be a strict rule without any exceptions. Only in such case, teams will be more responsible and will pay more attention to metrics. Also, we realize that have zero open P2 bugs is not realistic expectation in our case. Therefore, we revised release readiness metrics and introduced thresholds for P2 bugs. Thresholds, this is an acceptable amount of P2 bugs. These thresholds were defined based on historical data. At the same time, there was a transformation on the client side. All teams have been combined into value streams. Value stream, it's a set of teams dedicated to one domain scope. Value streams are managed by stream leaders. They are responsible for the whole processes inside of the stream, including release readiness. And they report to top management on the client side. Finally, release champion role was deprecated because value streams were able to execute all necessary actions. And the results were controlled by stream leaders. Also, the release readiness email was simplified. Now it contains only the overall release readiness status and the status for each release readiness criteria. There is no need to dive deep in numbers. It's enough to take a look on the overall status. Is it green, yellow, or red? And also, the release readiness status report was reworked and aligned with the new release readiness metrics. So eventually, did we able to meet release readiness criteria? What do you think? I'm proud to say yes, we did it. 5 releases were passed after the final transformation, and all of them were launched only after the release readiness criteria were met. 4 of 5 releases were launched on time, without delays, according to the initial schedule. And 1 release was postponed for 2 days because release readiness were not met. And we are considering this is a success. And I'd like to summarize key results which were achieved during the 4 years of release readiness process evolution. First of all, data-driven decision-making approach was finally implemented. Release readiness decision makes based on metrics. Releases happen only if release readiness metrics are achieved. Otherwise, release is postponed. The next key result, that release readiness metrics were defined, adjusted, and they are achievable. The next key result, that PowerBI framework was adopted. We created a dozen of reports. All they are aimed at improving or simplifying different processes of software development lifecycle. All of them are used by the whole teams across the program. Also, release readiness process is sustainable and works without release churn support. The next key result is release planning process was significantly reworked and improved. PA planning makes based on velocity and capacity. The status of the delivery can be tracked. Risks are automatically highlighted. And the last, but maybe the most important achievement is that the product quality was increased. But speaking about the quality of the product, it's fair to say that now we can control the number of known bugs in the application and keep it on the defined level. But this is a great achievement, but it doesn't guarantee that the end users will not find bugs which could be missed by engineering teams. And inspired by the result of release readiness process initiative, we started the new huge initiative which called annual engineering goals. And this part of our story will be announced by Maksim. Maksim, please, the stage is yours.
All right. So about annual project goals, you mentioned engineering. We started with engineering, but in general, it's about project and even now more product. So let's see what we have right now. First of all, let's quickly revise the issues that we had to align them with annual goals topic. So we were quickly growing and faced with issues of misalignment in terms of quality criteria and process effectiveness. And to solve that, we introduced annual goals. First of all, we raised the proposal to evaluate current state of the project, identify gaps, and set targets to become better. We started with overall project evaluation. We used Nginx program that EPAM provides. We got experts who investigated and evaluated the project based on the data we shared, highlighted strong and weak sides, and made the proposal what should be improved. At that time, we already had a set of metrics, and it was suggested to allocate some of them as KPIs, so to focus on something. Customer managers checked KPIs and targets in industry in different areas, like, for example, different containment effectiveness or DCE in terms of quality, or service level agreement or SLA in DevOps. And after that, with consultancy with Nginx representative, we defined KPI. Then we measured baseline, our current state, and found issues that data is not consistent. So teams differently used some Jira fields, for example, affected version, fixed version, status transition, etc. And it make data inconsistent. So we fixed it and correct the process to make data consistent so we can rely on that. So teams following the same approach. And then we set targets. So let's see what we have as a result. At that time, we had 4 KPIs. By the way, here annual is US fiscal year. So KPIs. First, bug backlog. In our terms, it's about bugs staying open in Jira, and it's about product quality or quality depth in general. And we had target to reduce it by 10% during the year. Next, escapes. Escape for us, it's bug that is missed during implementation phase or found in version that is already released, that is already delivered to a customer. It might be a regression issue, it might be issue in new functionality, but this is the issue that we missed during implementation, during testing of our product. And it's more about customer experience, and we had target to reduce it by 15%. Third KPI here, it's cycle time. So it's time between ticket appears in backlog in Jira till it's delivered to production, so it's available to customer. And it's about time required to deliver value to a client. And the target was to reduce it to 10 days. And the last one is a regression effort. It's about time spent on regression testing before we do measure release. And the target was about reducing this effort by 30%. Next, this is visualization of KPIs in Power BI. So using the approach with Readiness, we reused Power BI as a framework for metrics and built some boards to present our KPIs, to easily consume them, to work with targets. So from the left to the right, each target, I hope you see my scroll. So we had 4 KPIs. There is a line for each. So from the left side, this is the name of KPI with link to the details. Next, this is current progress with color identification. At that time, this is a snapshot of data in past. It's about May last year. We were like plus 10% bugs staying in backlog in comparison with baseline. This widget presents some data around this metric. So fiscal year 21 was the baseline with 25 bugs. Our target was 130 with minus 10%, and current state was 138 with plus 10% change. And this is the trend that you may see. It's based on months, start of months, if I'm not mistaken. So it's growing, going down, but still target was 113, and still we were sometimes close, sometimes far. And table that represents the same data but just in table view. So this is a high level of overview of KPIs with targets. Plus we had drill through with details for each metric. This is high level information which is useful for high level managers or high level picture. Together with that, in some cases, more for engineering teams, you need to go to the details to understand what is under hood of these values. And this is another report. I'm not showing it within this presentation, but still, this is high-level picture in terms of KPIs. So once we measured it, we measured baseline, we set targets, we visualized the KPI values plus progress. We communicated that with teams to make targets and expectations clear for them. We confirmed the approach with goals, targets, that they are achievable. And after that, teams and streams defined their gaps in terms of goals and implemented strategy how they are going to achieve these targets we had. Next, we just follow strategies and regularly track progress in terms of targets and adjust strategy if something goes wrong or there is no effect on targets, on current progress. And the progress was reported to higher management by each stream every quarter. And finally, at the end of the year, we checked results. head retrospective of annual goals achievements, and repeat the process to define KPIs and targets for the next year. Sounds pretty simple, right? But in practice, it's not so easy. So after the first iteration, we fixed some issues that we already discussed. So that time, after the first iteration, we had clear and aligned targets for the whole organization that allowed us to work on most critical areas, on most critical parts of our organization, and don't waste time on minor ones. We got general key metrics for every stream that was visualized and available for everyone with current progress in terms of goals. With that, we made a decision based on data. So KPIs we can rely on them. And we had ability to measure success or failure, so it depends. Together with that, still, we had some issues. First of all, there was no strive to achieve targets. What will happen if we don't fit target? What if fit? So we need to work on motivation of people to work with the targets. Also, some areas were covered by 1-2 metrics, for example, quality, but some areas were missing, for example, service availability for clients. And some KPIs were not relevant for some teams and departments. For example, teams that were following Kanban, cycle time is not so applicable for them. DevOps or product owners were missed as well. And finally, most of targets were not achieved. But this is a start, and we understand what can be improved. Next iteration now is in progress, and we changed the process a little bit. KPIs for next iteration were split by areas like quality, test automation, user experience, and uptime. Measures and targets for each area. For example, in quality, we focus on customer regression, customer escapes, and defect depth. Automation, it's about stability. It's about test automation. It's about stability, effectiveness, and coverage. Some metrics for user experience and uptime for dev environment and production environment. So with these 4 groups, we cover more dimensions of project, and now even product is covered. It's about experience. So more project organizations involved, like DevOps and product owners, not only engineers, testers, developers. Also, visualization has been changed. Here is an example of customer escapes in terms of quality goals with trends for actual state and target for release. So, for example, this is current state versus target by releases, and we're not in a good shape, but still doing most of that we can. So this gives an overview of the trend. This is just values, what is the target and what is current state that we have in terms of customer escapes. This is second year. We are with annual goals, and we will have much fun with adopting that process. That's all about annual project goals. So as I mentioned, it's still in progress with experience in terms of readiness. I hope we will have some success. Summary, what we learned. I hope we have time. Yeah. What we learned, and that information can be used as points to consider if you want to introduce similar approach on your project. First of all, measure your project. So understand what are key values and measure issues. Values here, I mean what is important for you, not about numbers, but what you value in terms of your project. So, and measure issues to solve. Concentrate only on critical parts. Don't have thousands of KPIs. Make metrics uniform and accessible for everyone. Calculate metrics following single approach for everyone. So align business and engineering goals and make values available for people, for engineers and managers within your organization. Provide high-level picture and details separately. So as I presented one of the slides with KPIs on a high level of the first year, keep in mind that there are different stakeholders and they are interested in different levels of data. So give overall status on a high level for managers or just for the general picture within the organization without details. But for teams, they should be able to go deeper in data to understand what's the root cause of these values, how they are calculated. And it should be easy to read and understand metrics. Set up goals as early as possible. Earlier setup, less data, habits, process will be required to change, to adapt to a new approach. Keep your data clean. We have this issue, so teams, streams have to follow the same approach in work with ticketing system, test management system, and other data sources for metrics. So there is consistent and reliable data. It might be easy to fix, might be not. It depends on previous goal, how early you set up it. Select proper tooling and approach. Tools should help building and reading the data. Approach should be clear and understandable for everyone and should not overwhelm stakeholders. As you mentioned, we tried with Jira, but it didn't work for us. So currently we are in PowerBI and it perfectly worked fine. It depends on your project. It depends on the context you have, but tooling is, I would say, important part here. Be proactive and patient. Release readiness process of work with annual goals. This is additional activity and work measures for teams they might don't like. Be ready to go through pushbacks and resistance. You can try POC, prove it that it works, use some small focus group, some Scrum team, whatever, to try it out and adjust. So you have proof that approach works for you, or you understand what is required to make it work. And be ready to drive it, find someone motivated to keep it working. It's likely it won't work from the first attempt, especially on big projects. So try it, evaluate, adjust, and try again. And have ambitious and achievable targets at the same time. So targets should be ambitious, but achievable. So people should understand how to achieve them. And at the same time, you need to motivate people to get more, do something more than it's doing day to day. So that's all that we have. Thank you for your time. This is our contacts. If you have any questions, you can direct to us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Yury. We do have some questions I wanted to ask you, and the audience is asking actually from you. So, how long did it take you to implement the whole transformation program? How many months, years?
Yeah, let me answer this question. I mentioned that it takes more than 4 years in order to implement release readiness process.
4 years, but why it took so long? Why did it take so long?
Yeah, this is a reasonable question, and we often receive such questions when someone finds out how long it was taken on our project. Let me answer the following way. For example, if you are involved into the process, into the project with a huge scale like our project, and you are going to implement some new initiative, for example, release readiness metrics, annual goals, or any other, and I try to share some obstacles you can face with during the implementation process.
Yeah.
So yeah, first of all, you should have a proper level of authority and excellent reputation proves by your past experience, past achievements. You will never be encouraged to drive initiative for such big project if you didn't have success stories in the past. This is very important. Second issue which should take into account that it may be more general, but your proposal should aim to resolve urgent issue on the client side, on the client business. Sometimes clients even don't understand that the issues exist, and you need to show how that the issues exist and how the big it is. And
so basically what you're saying that the stakeholders on the customer side did not recognize that they had these issues.
Sometimes if stakeholders are not operated by numbers, by metrics, by values, they don't see the overall picture. And if you will provide the numbers, they can be a little bit shocked. It was our case. And the goal is to operate only objectives data, not any like feelings or assumptions. And only in such case, if you will show the overall picture and you will convince the client to invest resources into resolving the issue. One additional, the next maybe point if you want to mention that you should take into account that all teams will have its own priorities and goals, and their goals could be rather different than yours. And of course, you can try to force them to follow your process, to follow your rules, but in most cases, you will not receive acceptable results. And you have to prepare to be prepared to teams' resistance. Therefore, more reliable way is to convince teams that these changes will be beneficial for them. And only in this case, you can succeed. And this is not a very fast and quick exercise.
Oh yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah.
And any life hacks? How did you convince the teams that these changes will benefit them?
So first of all, we need to provide some information, some benefits, find key priorities for each team, and we need to find a proper words for each team, each stakeholder, and to pay attention to the most important and maybe painful points. Also, this is not a quick, but you need to change team's mindset because this is a kind of evolutionary process, and it's a kind of long-term initiative, but it brings benefits in the future as a result.
Changing their mindset.
Yeah, yeah. Also, maybe the last point which I want to mention that each process or even change into existing process should run through the following stages: storming, norming, and performing. It means that it takes more, for example, 3+ iterations of the process execution before you can evaluate or assess the results of the process. In our case, we released twice, or we released each 2 months, and it takes more than half a year in order to understand whether our process is effective or not. And my personal suggestion is, if you are planning to take part into such or similar initiatives, please be a critical thinker when you are trying to estimate timelines. It's better to be more pessimistic with estimations, but only in such case you will have more chances to meet your timelines.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's very interesting. And where did you get how did you select the KPIs? Where did you get those KPIs? Why did you decide to set up these specific KPIs for your transformation program?
Okay, I was involved in this part, so I can answer.
Yeah.
I would say there is no like single source of KPIs that you can just take and it will work for you. It's about marketing research. It's about different books, influencers, different companies that may have success using these KPIs. In our case, there was a book. Actually, I don't remember what it was, but it was a book about a company that made success with 4 KPIs. But again, it might work or might not for your industry, for your people. As you mentioned, it took for us about 4 years to apply release readiness. But there is nothing in that book about that like hard obstacle that we need to struggle to work with. So I would say Google plus ChatGPT. Actually, I was curious and recently asked where to get KPIs. So uh, it gave the answer where you can look for them. Many services, many sources of KPIs. Just need to understand what is your values. As I mentioned, what is valuable for your organization, what is valuable for your customers, whether it's service availability, whether it's quality, whether it's performance. So based on that, based on understanding of your customer and your project, you can select something. In addition, probably for e-commerce, it would work. We have Delivery Central. We have set of metrics on Confluence on Wiki. If I'm not mistaken, Nginx group also uses them. And there are KPIs plus targets, like suggestions within the industry. So it could be used as well.
I got it. Thank you. So basically, I understood that in order to select KPIs, you need to understand the goals you want to achieve and then choose from the range of KPIs the ones that will show how closer to the goal you are approaching.
It's about goal and plus what is valuable for you, and you should keep it on a good level. So you may have some good result as of now, and you need to keep it as is, not downgrade. So this is also important.
And to make sure that your transformation doesn't spoil that is already working.
Yep.
Yeah, by the way, it's important. So probably you should write like the book like this with all these obstacles.
Sometime probably yes.
And one more question. Um, this one is from me actually. Now that you've gone all this way through transformation, like years, and coping with pushback and with all these obstacles, is there anything like one or two things that you would do differently? That was a tough one.
Um, Actually, again, it depends on the project. Currently, I'm working in really small team. It's about 3 person, but we currently I'm applying goals as well. Communications manager, at least being small team or big team, big project, you need to understand what is your target, what are values for you. And so I would say like it works in small team, but it's really different. It's like 1 2 stakeholder and that's it. and you as a team lead. So I would say it really depends on the project, and just start it. Just be patient and be proactive to try it out, have POC, and see how it goes.
So be
This is my
patient, be
answer.
proactive, start doing, and understand the scale. Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Max, Yury, for your presentation. Thank you, dear audience, for being with us, for listening, for asking the questions. I hope you liked it. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.